protecting Main Street from Wall Street. It's time for Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
You have to have a plan where you know if the market's going to go up, what happens next. And you also have to have a plan where if it doesn't go the way you think, you know what you're going to do.
It's time to put you back in control of your money.
I'm not trying to predict the weather, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? It's predicting the stock market. I'm trying to build a better boat.
This is Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
Welcome to the Money Unleashed podcast, powered by the Hoffman Financial Group. I'm Eric Johnson, alongside Kyle Allyn, as always. We're the vice presidents of Hoffman Financial Group. You can catch new episodes on Monday and Friday each and every week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Let's jump into the show. Communication's key. Communication is key. I would argue it's probably one of the biggest keys of everything in life, whether it be relationships, being at work, with your children, with your spouse, especially with your finances. You know, we were kind of joking about your safari you're about to go on in South Africa, but imagine if your guy did come back and then all of a sudden they're not talking to you at all.
Yeah,
right?
that just makes you nervous. You're like, well, why aren't they saying anything to me?
You feel good because it's there, but like the fact that they're not talking to you, that's concerning in and of itself. And I would argue that making sure that you've got a good way to speak to your financial advisor, whether it be 2 times a year, quarterly, however you want to set it up. We like quarterly, and we let our clients pull it back if they want a little bit less. Typically, when they're on the retirement train, they talk to us less because they're not really concerned about what's going on in the markets. But communication's key. You want to know what your financial advisor's thinking, especially if they're handling your financial freedom, and you got to make sure that that's set up properly. And that's part of the issue when choosing a financial advisor. And this is what I tell people. You know, I have people all the time that come in and tell me, hey, I'm interviewing many firms. I'm like, great, you should. People tend to get paralysis by analysis. I tell them these 3 things are the most important things you're looking for when you're trying to find a new or a financial advisor in the first place. It's A, you got to like my face because I'm a retirement planner. I'm going to go with you till your boots up.
For everybody that hasn't met Eric, he's got a good face. He's not Brad Pitt.
Not bad.
But he's got big shoulders. He's a big, strong man. He's got a good face.
Hey, you know what? I'm starting to blush a little bit. You keep it up there. You
Okay.
keep butter in my buns.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Right? So you got to like my face, number 1. Right? Number 2, the communication is key. And it's not necessarily when the market's going up. Our phones are always quiet when the market's going up. Is you need to have a good communication set up with your financial advisor when things are going a little wonky. Right? So you need to understand to be able to push through the emotion to listen to what you're being told or coached through to what we need to do next in order to either protect you or maximize what's going on. And then 3, it's very simple. It's just a plan that works and it's tweakable. Those are really the only 3 things that you're looking for. But number 2, when I always tell people, is communication, right? Like if I can't communicate to you or vice versa back to me where we're on the same sheet of music, it gets very difficult to help drive somebody's portfolio bus, if you will, through retirement. So you got to have communication, Kyle, and I would argue it's number 1. What do you say?
Yeah, and it's exactly what we're looking at here, right? So I found this little study. The Alliance for Lifetime Income released its annual retirement income planning study. According to the study, 62% of financial professionals say they cover protected income with their clients, but only 27% of investors polled agreed. Nearly all the investors surveyed believe protecting their retirement assets is important. That makes sense, right?
I think so, yep.
But only 79% of financial professionals shared the view. Right? So we're saying that there's this disconnect between what the advisors feel they've said and what the clients feel they've heard. And there's also a disconnect between what they feel is important. So one of the ways that I work through this with clients is I always say to them right off the bat in the first meeting is being a fiduciary is the right to be offensive. All right? So a lot of times clients are coming in and they're thinking, you're going to sell me. You want to sell me some stock. You want to sell me some insurance product. And so one of the things I do to try to break up that reality is just say, hey, I'm going to be offensive. I'm going to say the things that you may not like. Now, bear with me because it's date number 1, and I don't want to be offensive, right? If you're offensive on the first date, you don't get a second date.
Yeah, true.
But being a fiduciary is working with clients to find out, 1, who they are as a person, and then 2, what it is they want or need, right? So sometimes when a client comes in and you're sitting down with them, there's this preconceived notion that a financial advisor is going to have, almost like they need to preach or teach. And so one of the things I try to do is clear my mind and sit in that moment with the client and be as present as possible because you don't know how many kids they have. You don't know what their tax circumstances are. You don't know what their previous interactions with the stock market feel like. You don't know if they've had an advisor before. You don't know if they have a pension. You don't know if they have Social Security or not. Mm-hmm. You don't know if they want to move to another state. You don't know so many things. And so I would argue if you sit down with somebody in a first meeting or you're working with a financial advisor and they're not asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of listening, you might want to be careful. I like your 3 things, and I always tell people the easiest way to remember the Hoffman Financial Group is the 3 Fs. You've got fidelity, that's the custodian that holds the assets. Fiduciary, that's what I'm talking about here, which is someone who is trying to act in your interest. To do that, they have to ask questions and understand you. And then the last one is fee-based, right?
Yep.
So from a basic standpoint, one of the easiest ways I try to communicate with people who we are, what we do, is fidelity, fiduciary, fee-based.
You know what I really love, what you just said right there, is how you have to get to know people. It's funny because sometimes I'll have people come in for a portfolio x-ray and they want me to make a plan without even meeting them. And I'm like, I can't do that. And they're like, what do you mean you can't do that? And I'm like, well, it's very simple. Like, everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's got a different size portfolio. Everyone's got a different lifestyle. You have different wishes, wants, and needs. Like, I had a gentleman come up the other day, he goes, I love pro cycling. That's new to me, but they wanted to travel a Tour de France. They wanted to go to all these different countries where they got pro cycling circuits. Like, how the heck am I supposed to make a plan for that if I don't get to know you a little bit?
No doubt.
Right? So you have to understand, what did you used to do? How much did you used to make? Like, tell me about your family situation. Are you taking care of your parents? Are they taking care of you? Like, do you have a house? Do you not have a house? Do you have rentals? Like, all these things are critical into creating a plan for somebody. It's like the concept, if you go to a doctor and your ankle's bothering you, you tell them it's your finger, that's not going to help out too much, right? So being able to communicate and get to understand what a family's truly made of inside and out and what they like to do, the fun things that they want to incorporate, retirement. I think one of the biggest ones that I uncover every time I talk to them is, tell me about your children. Mm-hmm. And that could go so many different directions.
Let me give you a very specific into that because that is massive.
Yeah.
I was working with a family, and so one of the things that we were talking about with them is that their previous advisor, they now work with me, so they had been interviewing me. They've now chosen the Hoffman Group.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons they chose us is they noticed that their previous advisor would go to service level deep, and we would go even deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it was about the kids. And so one of the things that they had seen on TV and radio was that Roth conversions were powerful, right? So for everybody in radio land, we talk a lot about why you need to do Roth conversions because over time, it can limit and really help you from a tax standpoint to pay less in taxes.
Not to mention legacy.
Totally. Well, legacy was kind of the interesting curveball because when we started talking to this family, we found out that they have 6 kids and 9 grandkids.
Wow.
So they live in a world where the diversification,
Robinson.
the diversification of people getting the assets is massive. They might be the only family that I talked to this year with that reality, right? People just don't do that anymore.
Right.
But when you look at their case, when you work with them on their assets, you have to consider the fact that, somewhere between 12 and 20 people are going to inherit these assets. And so Roth conversions for them do not have the power that they would have for somebody with, say, 2 kids.
Yep.
And so they live in a world where they actually should, for tax purposes, take lower tax now, ignore the Roth conversions because of the diversification through the legacy process. So the point here is you have to go deep. And if you're working with somebody who's staying very shallow and saying, hey, are you conservative or are you aggressive? And they make you fill out a little survey and then they plop you in some cookie cutter thing.
Yep.
That voice on the inside that says this is cookie cutter, that voice is there because it is. A lot of Wall Street is this very mundane cookie cutter process of putting you in a cattle call so they don't have to think and you don't get to talk. And that is just not how it works at the Hoffman Financial Group. We are building custom, personalized plans that enable you to get through retirement confidently, clearly, and with this communication level with your advisor. That way, when you see tough things or you see prosperity, you have already had discussions about what's going on.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're getting ready for retirement, a custom design portfolio, that's so important. It's funny because, you see every single situation when you sit in our seat, right? We sit down with thousands of families every single year. We help them with their retirement. It's about making sure you're taking care of that specific wishes, want, and need. Like I had a client come in 2 weeks ago, and I see this quite a bit where they have a special needs child. You're not planning for 2 retirements, you're planning for 3, right? Like getting to know those types of details, that's what makes it work, and it could be the difference of making it not work.
Yeah.
Right? And asking those questions. I hate it when people come in there like, I had a meeting with an advisor. We met for 15 minutes. They asked me 3 questions, and here I am, and this is what's going on. I don't like it.
Now, I do want to say this because it sounds like we're picking on the other firms. I empathize.
No.
Look, I empathize with the big firms, right? Most of them have 2 names. You know who they are.
Yep.
If you run a firm that large with that many advisors and that many clients, it's extremely tough to be customized. It's extremely tough to even give that flexibility and autonomy to the advisors. So as someone who is a part of the executive group running this team, running this company, I kind of empathize with the big firms, right? I would argue that if you're someone who is with a big firm, that's okay. But once you get to a place where you've really built some assets and you've got some substantial things in your portfolio, once you get to a place where it's more complex like distribution and retirement, you've got to graduate, right? There was nothing wrong with going to middle school. There was nothing wrong with going to high school, but you got to graduate. You got to get to the point where you recognize that the complexities of the discussions and the size of the assets can deem you a higher caliber of financial advisor, which is what we're talking about.
Right, and that includes tax strategy, that includes income plans, it includes Roth conversions, it includes RMDs, it includes growth in retirement, it includes protection in retirement, it includes absolutely everything, and you have to address all of these in order to have a successful retirement plan. So when we're talking about communication, it's on many different levels of A, getting to know people, B, finding out what's important to them, and then C, actually implementing a plan that's made just for them. Cookie cutter might be fine up until your mid-50s, right? But then you start realizing that you kind of feel like there's more to this game, right? Because if you're looking at a typical Wall Street model of a 2 to 3% dividend portfolio, you don't want to become a millionaire to spend $30,000 or $40,000 a year. You want to actually act like a millionaire.
Totally.
Right?
Most people are sitting in these retirement plans at their work, right? Through a target date fund or some kind of 401k design that is ultimately just a bunch of mutual funds.
Yep.
So even if you don't have an advisor, you may not realize. I was working with a lady yesterday, and she had a TSP, right? So she worked for one of the government acronyms. We got the DOJ and the DOD and the CDC, all the acronyms, right? She had a TSP. So if you're listening and you say, hey, I've got a TSP, and I said something to her that just broke her heart. I said, ma'am, your TSP is awful. And she looked at me like I was the devil.
Yeah.
Like I had 3 heads, like I was the worst. And so what I meant by that, and I showed it to her, if she wanted to grow her assets going forward, if she wanted to be in the growth parts of the economy, right? There's 11 sectors in the S&P 500. If she wanted to focus her efforts into the growth side, meaning things like healthcare, things like technology, things like communication services, that's not available, right? She got the C fund, she got the S fund. It is what it is. So we looked at the charts and I said, can you see that over the last 10 years, yes, you made substantial gains in the S&P 500, but had you been specifically in things like the NASDAQ, you would have made 2, 3, 4 times the return.
Right.
She goes, that blows me away. I go, ma'am, that is the reality of what a big firm is trying to do when they manage all the retirement assets for a company or a government institution. So if you're in cookie cutter in any way, if you're feeling uncommunicated with in any way, the great news is we have a solution.
That's right. And we do take the time to get to know you. We do take the time to put together a custom design plan for you. And we do take the time to meet with you to make sure it's working and walk you through, hand in hand, the transition into retirement and into the income phase of your life. I can't argue enough on how important it is to get all this taken care of, because you do not want to be worrying on a day-to-day basis, especially when you live in the crazy world that we live in, when everyone's got a political opinion and you've got geopolitics in your face every single day, and there's a new buzzword, whether it be tariffs or uncertainty or transitory or whatever the next T word that's going to be coming down the pike that's going to scare the crap out of you. You got to put a plan in place, and you need someone to communicate with you. And I've got great news for everybody. It's what we specialize in doing. And the best part about it is it costs nothing to get started with Hoffman Financial Group. Give us a call so we can put one of these together for you so you can have some peace of mind in retirement. 404-640-5511. That's 404-5511. Or you can find us online on unleashyourmoney.com.
Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn are investment advisor representatives of Brookstone Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor and affiliate of Brookstone Capital Management, LLC. BWA and Hoffman Financial Group are affiliated under common ownership. Registered investment advisors and investment advisor representatives act as fiduciaries for all of our investment management clients. We have an obligation to act in the best interest of our clients and to make full disclosures of any conflicts of interest. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV2A, page 4, for additional information. The Hoffman Financial Group and WSB are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. vehicle. This information should not be considered tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the field of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Any client experiences discussed during the show are unique to that client. They are not meant to imply or suggest you will experience the same results. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments will fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Any comments regarding safe and secure products and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Fixed insurance and annuity product guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing company and are not offered by Brookstone. Index or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV2A Item 4, for additional information. Hoffman Financial Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Insurance licensed in Georgia, number 163546.